Rikesh, I have to admit, I've got a very unsophisticated palate, and I don't actually appreciate whiskey or scotch. But I'm just curious. I mean, given the fact that you guys are investing in very, old-age whiskey and scotch here, is there any chance that any of this can be perishable?
Well, I think that's one of the great things about whiskey when you compare it to wine, which obviously you're both very familiar with. I mean, once whiskey is put into the bottle, once whiskey's put into the bottle, actually the aging stops. So that's one of the big attractions of whiskey, is that it is a distilled product. So really, once it's in the bottle, you really don't get any of that perishable effect until you, of course, open it and then consume it within a few months. So that's one of the advantages of whiskey, let's say, compared to wine.
When you look at the pricing here, Adam, Rikesh, we're having a look at this investment-grade Scotch indices. First time I've heard of that particular indice, I have to tell you. Produced by Whisky Highland UK, show that in the last 3 years, sales of the top 1,000 single malts were up 130%. The top 250 single malts up 200%, and the top 100 up by 230%. Now, is that sort of growth in terms of price going to continue? I mean, if we can't make 30% back on what we made in the US last year...
That's better than any asset class I know of.
I told you you'd like this one.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, sure. And just to explain that data a little further, the Whisky Highland looks at every single bottle of single malt whiskey that's sold in the UK auction market. So they catalog each bottle, and that's how they produce their indices. So clearly, some amazing and astonishing returns in the last few years. Will it continue? Well, basically, this is a very simple supply and demand equation. So what happened in the 1980s and 90s in Scotland is very simply they didn't see the demand that would be coming out of Asia. It was impossible to predict that Taiwan, for example, which throughout the 80s and 90s had a lot of blended scotch, and in 1997 brought zero bottles of single malt scotch into Taiwan, and I think today, last year, it's up to about 650,000 cases. So it's Taiwan, it's Singapore, it's China a little bit, but India as well, and they just simply